Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. By the way, if you're not aware of it, there's something called a presidential primary underway in the state of Pennsylvania. Wait till you see who we have on as our special guest. And the subprime mortgage situation, is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Is there something that can be done about it? All of that and more following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the show. Well, listen, we have been locked out in the state of Pennsylvania of having a meaningful choice in a presidential preference primary since, well, maybe when all of our grandfathers were voting, but no longer. We got one of the biggest races. It's going to go on for 5 weeks or so. And I couldn't have a better guest to join me. He's the chairman of the Democratic State Party in Pennsylvania, former House member, T.J. Rooney. Thanks for coming on the program.
It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, now, I'll tell you something. Are you getting any sleep at all?
It's been a crazy ride so far, and it promises just to get, that much crazier.
But let me tell you something. Do you agree with me it's about time the voters, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, it's too bad the Republicans don't have a race going on, because I think their voters deserve an opportunity, just like the Democratic voters are getting.
Yeah, Terry, I mean, I wish it were not from, 5.5 more weeks.
5 weeks is too long.
It's way too long. I don't think it's good for the party. I don't think it's good for the candidates. It just gives that much more opportunity. Listen, I'm not worried about Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, going off the rails.
Sure.
But it's the surrogates, and if this...
And we've had a couple of those just this week again.
We sure have. And the promises, unfortunately, to be more. And that's what could be our undoing. And I don't want to see that. I mean, I support Senator Clinton wholeheartedly, but I respect the world of Barack Obama. And I really have a deep respect for his supporters. So we got to keep that tone, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that I find surprising, and it picked up a little difference in the Mississippi exit polls, but at the moment, in the polls that I've done, the polls that I've seen, Democratic voters are actually fairly happy with both candidates.
Yeah.
It's the activists that maybe not, the people on both sides at the higher levels who may not be crazy, about each other at the moment. Am I right about that?
You're absolutely right. Oftentimes, it's these kind of personal feuds that have nothing to do with the candidates. What I always say to people when we're working on campaigns, at the end of the day, this is not about you and me. This is about our candidate.
Sure.
And even when we go to these rallies and we hear these long-winded speeches, by people that are really should be a pre-programmed. Yeah. I was at an event recently.
Yeah, the Steve Reed situation in Harrisburg.
And I love Steve Reed. He is one of the most intelligent men on this planet.
The mayor of Harrisburg went on a little bit too long, as I think that's what Representative Rooney.
And there's been other. I'm not picking on Mayor Reed. He's a good man, and he's done great things for the city. But, at the end of the day, these campaigns are about the candidates, not about knuckleheads like me.
All right, let me ask you a question. Now, you're a Hillary Clinton supporter. She should win this state, but, she can't win in pledged delegates. That's fairly clear, given the crazy proportional rules that have been explained to everybody over and over again. Give me the best-case scenario of how Hillary becomes a nominee.
Well, I think when Democrats begin to look at electability and what it's going to take to win the fall election. I think Ed Rendell, a week ago on Meet the Press, did a great job suggesting that, listen, our nominee, you cannot be elected president as a Democrat unless you win at least 3 of the following 4, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Florida.
And you're going to say 1 all?
Well, obviously, Michigan, I really would not be so bold because Senator Obama's name wasn't on the ballot. She will do well. However, if there is a revote, she will, I believe, do very well in Florida and Michigan. And again, those are the states. Listen, I don't mean to discount the good people in Montana and Wyoming and Utah, but at the end of the day, if we're serious about electing a Democrat as president, we need somebody with the capacity and the ability to carry those important states. Hillary Clinton has that. I'm not so sure that Senator Obama does.
All right, let's turn our attention to another matter here. Nothing has been more controversial than the superdelegates, some 800 of them. It looks like maybe up to 400 are still in play. And I know superdelegates aren't elected. They get their positions by virtue of the party rules that gave them positions. Now, the theory was they were to be independent. The theory was that when they were created that they were to keep the party, centered in a sense. I don't mean centered ideologically, but so you don't have another McGovern, which was a disaster. And a lot of party people didn't like President Carter. What do you think a superdelegate, and Pennsylvania has 29 or 30, you had 30, you lost one.
Right. You have 29.
You have 29. I mean, what would you say to superdelegates as their role? Their own ideas, how the vote in the state goes? I mean...
No, I don't have a litmus test. I don't think that, because I don't think we need one. Here, think about it. Think about who the automatic delegates. I prefer the term because I'm no super delegate.
I got it.
But when you think about it, members of Congress, they have a political calculation to factor in to who they support. You know, if you're a member of Congress, you're an automatic delegate. If your district goes 70-30 for one candidate, and you're with that candidate, you got 30%. You got some splaining to do.
All right, we're going to go to a break. We're talking with T.J. Rooney, a former House member a big Clinton supporter, who's the chairman of the Democratic Party. We'll be back following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking what else about the hot Democratic presidential primary. The Democratic Party is in the center of the vortex. With me is T.J. Rooney, a former House member in the Pennsylvania legislature and currently the chair of the Democratic Party in the state. All right, T.J., let's your point is the superdelegate's pretty much free to do whatever they do. Some may say, I've got to vote my district. Boy, I want to know, and I won't ask you, yeah, you may want to comment. Let's see, Ted Kennedy, John Kerry in Massachusetts, and their governor, Duval Patrick, all three are big Obama supporters, but Hillary won their state. I wonder what they do.
Well, yeah, you know, what I've said all along about the superdelegates, even before Pennsylvania became relevant and very much in play, is everyone just ought to take a deep breath, sit back, take a pill if you need to, but let's not wee all over ourselves until we need to or have to. And superdelegates, I believe, will at the end of the day do the right thing. Somebody may have a different definition of the right thing than I do, but again, these people have constituencies. They are accountable to voters. One of the reasons, as you well know, you've written about it, that superdelegates came into being was so that average citizens could be slated as delegates, so that you don't have delegates who are all elected.
That's right.
So there's a lot of nuances to all this. It's been, there's been a lot of reporting, a lot of misreporting, and I just think people ought to sit back, take a chill, and see how this kind of shakes out.
Now, look, going forward, this is a state that Hillary Clinton absolutely needs to win.
Yes.
I mean, you made the case. Big states, swing states, electoral vote, huge chunk, not just in PA, but in these big states. That's her argument, her best argument. Agree?
Yes.
If she wins PA, this thing looks like it goes on to the convention, which isn't a bad idea. I want to ask you about that in a minute. Does it go on if she wins PA?
I hope not. I mean, yes, the answer is, will it? You bet. But if I had my druthers, and I know I won't, we've got to have a resolution. Think about it this way, Terry. I've been in conversations, as I always am, with the DNC, talking about the coordinated campaign, the campaign that really matters, the one in the fall, when we hopefully...
You mean the one we might have eight months of if the race ends now, the 8-month presidential campaign?
Right, but we've got to plan. We can plan on paper the infrastructure, but at the end of the day, the candidate is going to want his or her people in these very important positions.
Right.
I don't want to have to wait till early part of September to run a campaign.
Let's think about this. There were decades where the nominee was picked at the convention, not at the first ballot. It didn't affect winning and losing. There's a situation where you folks have 8 months. This thing began in earnest the first week in January. What's wrong? Are you that worried that your party will split up and divide? Is that a real concern of yours?
Yeah, you darn tootin'.
Even though the voters don't seem to be terribly unhappy, it's you guys in the leadership that are going to get more unhappy, right?
What I think is that we need to have a resolution, and it's not going to happen on April 23rd, but I think it can begin in earnest to happen on April 23rd.
But if she wins, it looks like this thing goes on for a while. If she loses, then I think there'll be very heavy pressure on Mrs. Clinton, Senator Clinton.
We've got to resolve the issues in Florida and Michigan with respect to how we're going to get their delegates.
All right, let me turn to something else. if we can. How does Hillary win the state? What does she have to do?
Well, she has to do...
I know, get more votes than Obama. That's not the answer I want.
Here's the... I mean, obviously, we have to hold the margin as best we can in the city of Philadelphia, do well in the counties, and then just do well everywhere else. And I think she will. But here's the thing. I don't think there's any disagreement, no person in America more vetted than Hillary Clinton. She needs to meet, and I know this sounds like duh, but she needs to meet as many Pennsylvanians as possible. She disarms people.
5 weeks to do this, right?
And I think that inures to her benefit. Yeah. You know, people have this impression that's been forged because of what Rush Limbaugh has said or what Fox News may have portrayed. The fact of the matter is she disarms people. When she meets people, have this impression of Hillary Clinton as being something different from what she is.
Distant
genuine,
and aloof, distant and aloof.
Yeah, and she connects to her. I mean, God, all this week we've seen it in places across Pennsylvania.
So in other words, it's let Hillary be Hillary and don't be doing all this staging that often
take the handlers off. Yeah. She's got great stuff. Don't get me. I'm not disparaging them.
No, I know what you're saying.
But let her be herself and let her get in front of as many people as possible. Yeah. I know that sounds stupid.
Well, and you know you've campaigned many times across the state. Until you get here, people don't realize how complex it is, how diverse it is, But you know, look, Ed Rendell beat Bob Casey in the Democratic gubernatorial primary by 150,000 votes in 2002. He won 10 counties.
Right.
So we may have 67 counties, and I know you'll be careful how you answer this. You only have to win 10 or 12 or 13 of them, right, to win the state.
But it's like I don't think that those numbers are going to work this time. You know, listen, you're the great historian in Pennsylvania politics. When was the last time a presidential candidate was in Oil City? I mean, I think they are going to be in Oil City. They're going to be in place. They're going to be in Williamsport. They're going to be in Johnstown and Altoona. The campaign will be everywhere. So it's going to touch all corners and all facets of the Democratic voting population. So it's just going to be like
we're having a regular U.S. Senate race in the state or a gubernatorial race. I mean, they'll spend...
On speed.
On speed, yeah, okay. Look, thanks for coming. I know this is a big time for you. Maybe we'll get you back before the primary ends, and this is going to be fascinating. But a final word here. I think Pennsylvania voters have long been denied the opportunity they're having. And as I said, we'll end where we start. I wish both parties were having this opportunity because I think the Republican voters deserve a chance, like the Democratic voter, to play a real role, and that's been denied them.
I don't disagree. We have to figure out a better way to build this mousetrap because this one is clearly not the most efficient way to nominate a president.
All right, go out. I know what you're going to be doing. You'll be running around this state like a crazy man for the next 5 weeks.
No doubt.
All right, the mortgage crisis, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Stay with us, and you're going to find out.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Now, I'll tell you, there's probably no more important subject than subprime mortgage situation in the country. It's caused a lot of reverberations in all aspects of the economy, and there's no one better to discuss that with us than Secretary Steve Kaplan. He's the Pennsylvania Department of Banking Cabinet Officer. Did I get that right?
That's absolutely right. Yep.
Well, I can get all caught up, and we don't want to do that. All right, Mr. Secretary, look, before we get into talking about what you think we ought to do about it, it's hard to know for sure the gravity and the extent of the mortgage crisis. Give us a quick overview of it, and then I want to ask you specifically about how it's playing in PA. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are really two aspects to it. The mortgage crisis is one thing for consumers that have these mortgages and the issues they confront, and in the last 6 months it's poured over into the global credit markets, right. And that's a whole different issue for Wall Street and those kind of folks. Essentially what we're talking about is an industry that has evolved in the last a dozen or so years, by and large unregulated, and it's evolved in very troubling ways. Many people recently, in the last 5 or 6 years, have been getting mortgage loans they simply could not afford to repay on the day they got them, and now they're in trouble.
Let's stay on that a minute. I mean, I have sort of two minds about this, and tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Look, I think Congress, when it made it easier for all this credit to be available several years ago, deliberately hoped that more people would be able to get a home. I mean, that's the American dream, right?
Right.
But in so doing, they created, in a sense, this structural situation where you've got predatory lenders and you've got people giving loans that they shouldn't. So my concern is that on the one hand, we want people to own a home, but we got to make sure they're not, like, if I can afford a $150,000 home, I shouldn't be buying a $400,000 home. Go ahead. That's
exactly right. And what we have to realize is we don't want to turn the clock back 30 years ago. 30 years ago, if you were not a prime borrower, pristine credit history, you essentially couldn't get a mortgage loan, and you couldn't realize the American dream. We have this notion of subprime mortgages, and subprime is not a bad word. Because there are subprime mortgages, many people who otherwise wouldn't be able to get a mortgage can own a home. And 80% of the people that get subprime mortgages pay their mortgages, stay in their homes, realize the American dream. It's the 20% that's
creating this chaos that, it has so many different angles to it that it's hard to get your handle around to what extent it's driving we know it's the stock market and almost every reverberation within that market, but we've got a weak dollar. There's so many other components to it. So let's see, before we go on and talk about some remedies, we've got to, and tell me if I'm right, we've got to find a way to help people get mortgages who can afford them, but at the same time, we got to be careful that we don't give mortgages at certain levels where people clearly can't pay them. And what we had in this situation was people taking advantage of the latter.
And that's right. And in order to combat that, it's extremely important for people to have good information. People are intelligent. They want to do the right thing for themselves. They want to do the best thing. But the way it's worked up until now, we don't always know what that is. The package of documents that you get in a mortgage closing situation is very thick and filled, with lawyer gobbledygook. You have to have a way that an average person can figure out just what they're getting themselves into.
I'll be candid, and I'll personalize this.
Yeah.
I've bought a number of homes in my life, as a lot of other people. One of my best friends is a lawyer. I know that's scary to a lot of people to have your best friend as a lawyer. But,
I'm a lawyer, too.
Well,
I apologize.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. And I don't read a word. I just say, Tom, what am I doing here? And I trust somebody. You think a lot of the trouble that people got into was because they trusted a broker, a lender of some kind without...
Well, objectively, there are people you should trust and people about whom you should be skeptical. If you go to a closing with your own lawyer, if you go to a housing counselor who's going to be interested in what's best for you, by all means trust them. But the person that's trying to sell you the mortgage, their interest is in making the sale. And you have to be a little bit leery and skeptical about the information they give you.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, the Pennsylvania Senate passed a bill that has some reform items in it that the Secretary and it's a Rendell administration proposal, I take it?
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about that, see how to fix some of the problems. We'll do that all after we hear from our commercial sponsors.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy. And by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking with Steve Kaplan. He's the Secretary of Banking, and we're into this mortgage crisis situation. It's pretty important. It's affected a lot of people's lives, and the Rendell administration has been pushing a package of 6 separate pieces of legislation, I think.
Well, there's 6 cases in the Senate. There's a similar package moving through the House, and in the House it's 5 because 2 of the bills were combined.
And they'll go to conference committee as they always go.
Exactly.
All right, tell our viewers what's in that package and why they should care about it.
It's got some key elements that are going to allow us to reform the way mortgages are done in Pennsylvania, and that will return, in my view, seriousness to a transaction that all people should consider to be extremely serious. The biggest single aspect of it is the licensing of individual loan originators, mortgage loan originators. Today, if I walk out of this studio and get a haircut in Pennsylvania, the person who cuts my hair is going to be licensed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. If I walk out of here and get a mortgage, not so.
So you're buying a $500,000 house, let's say, and I get it. Even I get that.
Yeah. I mean, licensing them will allow us to require education. They're going to be tested. They're going to have criminal records checks and all kinds of character references. Then we'll issue a license and we'll have the ability to have a handle, exercise some control over this stuff. In addition to that, a lot of the folks that have run into trouble with their mortgages recently have discovered that in order to get out of a problematic mortgage, you have to pay a prepayment penalty. We think that that's a really aggravating circumstance. 1974, we banned prepayment penalties on mortgages up to $50,000. We're looking to update that to today's marketplace and make it up to $200,000.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
We're also going to change the board that certifies and disciplines appraisers. We've run into some problems in Pennsylvania a couple of years back up in Monroe County where homes were being overappraised and people were being lured into paying homes for the wrong amount of money. And all those folks
from New Jersey and New York that were moving into there were used to high prices for houses anyway.
That's right. That's right.
And they were paying even more after they got here.
But for houses that weren't worth it.
Yeah, that's
today, the only people who sit on the appraisers board are other appraisers. Our proposal would have myself and the Attorney General joining that board so we could have some independent voices on that board. We also have difficulty in Pennsylvania staying up with foreclosure hotspots in real time. We have 67 counties. Foreclosure notices get filed in 67 counties. Very difficult to keep track of what's going on. We're going to require foreclosure notices to be CC'd to PHFA, the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. I'm the chairman of the board there, and it's going to give us an opportunity to know in real time what's going on across Pennsylvania.
All right, great update. You'll come back sometime and keep us updated on the progress. Hey, thanks for watching. See you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.